Hi, I'm Krista and I'm a product development chef at Canada's Smartest Kitchen. Welcome to our video cookbook series, which was made possible through a grant offered by the PEI Department of Health and Wellness. These videos are designed for people with mild to moderate intellectual disabilities to encourage greater independent living and healthy eating by offering an easy-to-follow guide to preparing healthy, inexpensive meals that use simple ingredients and common kitchen utensils. You can find the written recipes and ingredient lists by going to the PEI Association of Community Living website or by typing the link found at the end of the video into your browser. Ideally, you should have a support person who has greater kitchen experience as you try these recipes for the first time. Also remember, you can pause or rewind the videos to give yourself more time, or if there is something you need to listen to or see again. I will now show you how to open cans, protect your countertop, peel and chop vegetables, measure ingredients, line and grease pans, pour off fat, avoid cross-contamination, check meat temperature, and to store and freeze leftovers. So now we're going to talk about can openers. As you can see, there's many different kinds of can openers. We have manual types of can openers and we also have mechanical. If you have difficulty with grip or holding anything in your hand, you may want to try one of the mechanical can openers. It's a little bit easier to use. So now we'll just talk about how to use a manual can opener. So as you can see, there are two wheels on the can opener. There is a smooth top wheel and then there's a bumpy wheel for the bottom of the can. What you're going to do is take your can, place it on the counter. You're going to open up your can opener and place your smooth wheel on top of the lip of the can, like that. So once you have that up against the side of the can, then you're just going to squeeze it until you hear a pop. And you have to squeeze quite hard to get it to pop through the can. Once you get it there, you can see the smooth wheels on the top, on the inside of the lip, and the bumpy wheels on the side of the can. So now you're just going to turn the handle on the side, and as you can see, it's starting to cut through the can, and you need to keep your hand gripped really tight on this part to hold the wheels together so that it will cut through the can. And you just keep turning until you get all the way around the can. And once you get to the end, sometimes it'll pop open and you just kind of keep going a little bit more until it cuts through the can, and then open it and set it aside. At this point, now that your can is open, you're just going to put some pressure on the one side of the can just to pop the lid up. Be really careful on this edge because it's very, very sharp, and you just take that and set that to the side. So now moving on to a mechanical can opener. We have a couple of different kinds here. We have a handheld one, which is really good if you only have one hand to use. And then we have the countertop can opener as well. So for this type, it is just, you take your wheels are inside and you just set it on top of your can. And once it finds the right spot, it will automatically open it for you and you don't have to hold it onto it anymore. So this type of can opener is great if you don't have hand strength or if you need a little bit of extra help getting that can open. Okay, so this one takes it off in a little bit of a different way, and again, be careful because the edge of your can is very sharp. Okay, now we're going to use the mechanical can opener. So the difference with this one is you have to lift up the arm before you put your can in, and you still have the same wheels that you have to deal with. So we're just going to turn it. There we go. And just hold your hand underneath the can to make sure that it doesn't fall. There we go. And when it's done, once again, just be careful on the edge of your can because it's very sharp. There you go. Okay, so now we're going to talk about protecting your countertops. You can see we have stainless steel countertops here, so they are pretty easy to put stuff on, but at home you have a different type of countertop that you need to protect from heat and from cutting. So first we're going to talk about different ways to protect your countertop from heat. So a couple different things you can use. You can use a trivet, so just put your hot pot on top of your trivet on your table or on your countertop. That protects it from the heat. Another option is to use a towel. So we just have a folded towel. make sure you put your pot in the center. If you put it off to the side, it may touch your countertop or tip or fall or spill, which we don't want, so just put it in the center. It's nice and even and flat. And the last option that we have is a wire rack. So you can use a wire rack that you may have at home, and you can put your hot pot on top of that. Again, it just keeps it off of your countertop and protects it from the heat. So next up, we're going to talk about protecting your countertops from knives. So when you cut with knives, you don't want to cut right on your countertop. You want to use a cutting board. So we have a couple different types of cutting boards. This one is a wooden one. It's really great because it has little feet on the bottom of it. So you don't have to put anything on underneath it to hold it stable. It stays where you put it. The other option, which most of you probably have at home, is more like a plastic cutting board or something like this. And this one will slide around a lot if you use it on your counter. So what you want to do is actually take a tea towel or a damp cloth and just put it underneath. And that way, when you put your board on top, it doesn't move around as much. So it makes it a lot safer when you're trying to cut items. Okay, so now we're going to talk about cutting and chopping vegetables. So you have to be very careful when you're using knives. They're very sharp. One of the tips that I have is to keep a cloth next to your cutting board that you put your knives on when you're not using them. Always place them down with the blade facing towards the cutting board. That way you won't cut your hands if you come up next to it. So now when we cut vegetables, we're going to start with an onion, and you can see it kind of rolls around a lot on your cutting board. To avoid that, what you're going to do is just cut off the side of it and make it flat. So when you do that and you set your onion back down, it's not going to roll around now when you're trying to cut it. So I'm just going to cut off the ends and then peel it. Okay, so once you have it all peeled, just put your flat side down on your cutting board. And what you're going to do with your hand is just make it kind of into like a claw grip. So I'm holding it on each side of the onion, and then I've got my fingers bent underneath, and that's kind of putting pressure down on the onion to hold it in place. So now what I'm going to do with my knife is place the flat side of my knife against the side of my fingers and cut down. So each time I do this, I'm just moving my fingers back just a little bit as I cut. So with each cut, just slide your fingers back a little bit, keeping your fingers tucked in and away from the edge of your blade. And take your time. You don't have to go fast at this. It's okay if you're going nice and slow. That way you're safe and you're not going to cut your fingers. So just keep going until you get to the end and to where you're still comfortable with cutting. If you find when you get to the end you're losing your balance on your vegetable, just put it down flat on the board and just start cutting again the same way, just from a different side. You can also see when I'm cutting that I'm keeping the tip of my knife on my cutting board, and that helps it keep it steady as well, so I don't slide and cut my fingers. So another thing you can notice too is the different sizes of knives. You want to choose a size of knife that is appropriate for your cutting board. So we have a kind of a small cutting board here, so you can see this knife is really quite big, and it's almost too big for this cutting board. So what you can find is that your knife may slip off the end if it's too big, if you have too much to work with. So I chose something that's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit easier to control, and it fits within my cutting board as I'm cutting. Another thing to talk about is safety with knives. So whenever you're walking around the kitchen with a knife, or if you need to take it to the sink to clean it, always carry it down next to your side. So you don't want to have your knife up in the air when you're walking around. That is a safety hazard. Always keep it down next to your side. When you go to put it to be washed, place the knife next to the sink rather than in the sink so that nobody reaches in there and cuts their hand on accident. So now we're going to talk about peeling vegetables. I have a couple different types of peelers here. The first types are swivel peelers. So these are straight peelers. They don't really move around. We have a Y peeler as well. So this one you hold a little bit differently, just kind of with your finger there. It gives you a bit of a better grip. So now we'll start with carrots. So when you're peeling carrots, what you want to do is hold your carrot at the top, put your peeler down and just pull straight down to the end. So you can see you're just removing the top layer of skin. You don't want to keep going because then you'll lose your vegetable. And you just keep going and turning your carrot as you're peeling. Nice long even strips until you get the whole thing done. Okay, and then you can flip it around and just do the end, just a little shorter bursts of peeling. Okay, that's your carrot all peeled. So now we can peel a potato in the same kind of way. I'll use a different peeler so you can see how they work differently. This one you hold in your hand, so you can grip your potato in the same way, put your potato on the cutting board, and same thing, just peel. And you can see you're just removing the top layer of skin. You don't want to remove too much of the potato. And just go until you get all of that skin off. Okay, and you're keeping your fingers out of the way of the blade because the blade is sharp, remember that. Okay, holding on tightly to it as well so it doesn't slide around. Until you get the whole potato peeled. Just like that. So now we're going to talk about measuring liquid and dry ingredients. They are measured a little bit differently. You can see we have a few different measuring tools here. So we have a liquid measuring cup, some measuring spoons, and some dry measuring cups. So for measuring liquid, what you're going to do is you're going to get down to eye level with it. So when you pour your oil in, you want to be down level with where you're going to make your mark up to the line. So this way you know you're level. So there we've just poured half a cup. And when I'm down at eye level, I can see that it's right where it needs to be. For dry measuring, this is done a little bit differently. So with rice, we're going to use our measuring cups. You're going to scoop the rice that you need. And then you can see it's kind of overflowing your cup. So you're just going to take a knife and just the back straight part of the knife and just level that off. Right back into your dish that you're using. That way you know you have exactly the amount that you've measured and it's not overflowing. For spices, same thing. So you're going to use your dry measuring spoons, scoop the amount of spice that you need, and you can see again it's kind of overflowing your cup, and you're just going to scrape off the top so it's level, and that's exactly the measure that you need. Now I'm going to show you how to line and grease your pans. So we have a regular baking sheet here. We're going to take some tin foil and you're just going to pull out enough so that it is the length of your pan. Just tear it off and then you're going to press it down into your pan so that it's evenly lined. Okay, and it's okay if it comes up over the top of your pan, that's fine. Okay. So next I'll show you how to spray pan. So if your recipe calls for your pan to be greased, you're just going to take a can of cooking spray and just hold it about a foot off of the pan and just spray lightly just to coat the whole pan. The third option is to grease or oil your pan. So you can use cooking oil or you can use shortening. You're just going to pour a little bit into your pan. And you're just going to use your hand and just move it all around your pan until it's all coated. Right, and that's it. Okay, now we're going to talk about cross-contamination. One of the things you have to be concerned about when you're cooking is the use of raw meat in your kitchen. So raw meat can make you very sick. It has bacteria in it that if you don't cook it properly can make you sick. So when you're working with it, you have to make sure that you follow safe procedures. So we are going to cook this ground meat. You can see it's very pink and obviously raw. And you can see that we're using one utensil right now while the meat is still raw. So once you have this cooked enough that all of the pink is gone from your meat, We're going to switch to a different utensil, a clean one, and put this one in the sink to be washed. Okay, now that our meat is done cooking and there's no pink left in the meat, we're going to switch our spoon because we're going to add more ingredients. So we don't want our contaminated spoon mixing in with our freshly cooked meat. So we're just going to put this one in the sink. We're going to grab our clean spoon and add in some spices. I'm just going to add in a little bit of pepper and some salt and just stir that up. Okay, you can add more ingredients at this point too if you need. Okay, sometimes when you cook ground meat, you get a lot of fat that comes off of the meat into your pan, and you don't necessarily want that in your finished dish. So what we're going to do is pour the fat off into a bowl. So I have a heat-resistant glass bowl here and a mesh strainer. So I'm just going to pour everything right in there. You can see all the fat drains off through the bottom, separated from your meat. Just scrape it all out of your pan. Okay, and then you can just kind of move it around in your strainer a bit, just to get all the rest of the fat out. And then once it's drained, you can just add your meat back into your pan and continue cooking your recipe. So now I'm going to show you how to check the temperature of meat. It's really important that when you cook any sort of meat, chicken, pork, steak, that you check the temperature to make sure that it's cooked high enough to kill any bacteria. So we have chicken breast here, and what I'm going to do is show you how to check the temperature just using a digital probe. We have a couple different kinds here. You can get just a manual one. There's ones that are tethered like this, and this type here. So you're always going to want to put it into the thickest part of the meat. You don't want to stick your temperature probe down in just a thin part. You want to go into the side of the meat and just into the center. So you don't want to push it all the way through till you touch a bone or until you get to the other side of the pan. That's not going to give you an accurate reading. So for chicken, in particular, we want to get above 165 degrees Fahrenheit. So this one's at 175 degrees, so we know it's safe to eat. Okay, when you take your thermometer out, just make sure that you give it a wipe with a soapy cloth so that you get rid of any bacteria that's left on it before you put it away. So now we're going to talk about stovetop safety. You'll notice that stoves are a little bit different everywhere you go, but the general idea is the same. So one of the things we're going to look at is the dial. So when you look at the dial in the stove, you'll notice that there are different numbers on them. So it goes everywhere from low right up to high. So low heat is generally from low up to 3. Your medium heat is 4, 5, and 6. And then your high heat is from 7 to 9 or 7 to high. When you use the stove, make sure that you use a pot that's an appropriate size for your burner. So you can see here we have a small pot on our small burner, and just make sure that when you're using it that you turn your handles in on both your pots. Okay. And the reason you use the right size burner is so that you don't lose any heat when you're cooking. You want your food to cook evenly. Another thing to note is if you're using oven mitts, to make sure that you don't leave them on your stove top. That's a fire hazard. So you want to always make sure that you take them off and put them onto the counter away from heat. Now that you've learned some new kitchen skills and safety tips, follow the link below for our recipes. Let's get cooking.